we go. Okay, so welcome to our 7th MATLAB class. It's pretty amazing already, 7 classes. It was a lot of fun. So last class, we talked about visualizations and we introduced the 3 projects. So I hope that you all choose your own project. I remember that it was level 1, there was fully guided, then level 2, like halfway, and then level 3, which was pretty moderate, I think. Okay, so today we are going to talk about debugging, which is basically how to handle errors. And if there is some time, you can keep working on your project. So let's see this debugging. So the question is, what should we do when we have to deal with an error message? So the first 3 steps are when you encounter any kind of errors are always the same. And so it's first of all, read the error message. Second, read the error message again. And third, read it out loud. So that seems very, very trivial, very obvious, but it's not, because sometimes we get these very cryptic errors with a lot of like complex, I don't know, words. Maybe we don't even know what the error is talking about. Most times it's like that. And so we started to feel lost. And so we basically just, skim through the error message and we don't really understand what's going on. So here I'm just suggesting you, please, please, please do not practice avoidance. So that's a very important point. Read the error message, even if you do not understand what all the words in the error message mean. By reading all your error messages, you will begin to recognize like patterns in the errors, and so that will help you to guide your mind to locating the cause of the error. So said that, every error message will have a line number listed. So most of the time, this line number is the line where the problem is. And so that's very important because you can go check the code corresponding to that line. But in some cases, MATLAB has a hard time identifying the correct line. So you can be sure that the error is somewhere on the listed line or above. So at least it's a start. So what do we do once we have identified the error? So we have identified the error, and now what? So let's see some tips from the web.
So let's talk about how to debug your code. And we'll start with print statements. So the simplest way to tell what's going on in a program is to have the computer tell you itself. For many bugs, a print statement is an easy way to see what's going on in the program, what data is being used, or whether or not a function is being called correctly. Print statements are also available in just about every programming language, and generally, their output is able to be formatted in useful ways. This means that they can be used as a reliable debugging tool in just about any environment. They don't rely on any one specific debugging interface, platform, or IDE. And many developers will use print statements as an initial method for debugging a piece of code. And in many cases, just seeing the value of a variable or the result of a function call printed out can point to the problem. Nowadays, many programming environments will increase the power of print statements by giving developers useful interfaces for searching through complex data structures like objects or lists. Google Chrome, for example, is known for its great debugging interface. When you print out an object in JavaScript, it will display to debug your code would be error handling. Many programming languages provide a way of catching common errors in programs. So if a program throws an error, instead of crashing, it will be caught, and then some code can be executed which responds to the error. Now these try-catch blocks, as they're often called, are an invaluable resource for finding a bug. If your program keeps crashing at a particular spot, try surrounding that code with try-catch blocks and investigating the error object that gets returned. Now, try-catch blocks are especially useful for catching errors that don't occur very often. You can let the program run and only be notified when it actually breaks. And these structures are also useful for logging bugs and problems in a production environment. Many applications will add the error log caught by a try-catch to a database, along with the relevant state of the application, and then these logs can be looked over later to identify common bugs. The third way of debugging your program would be commenting things out. And this is one of my favorite debugging methods, which is commenting out code that you think might be a problem. So if you know a bug is in a block of code you're working with, but you're not sure which line or which part, it can be helpful to comment out the entire block and then start adding lines of code back in one by one until the bug resurfaces. Now, I use this technique a lot when working on websites. If there's a part of the website code which seems to be breaking, I'll comment it all out and then slowly add pieces back in until I find the culprit. And this is most useful when you've identified the general area where a bug lives, but you're not sure exactly what's causing it. When all else fails, it's good to ask another developer for help. And oftentimes, when trying to debug something for a while, you can get too close to the problem or you can go down a wrong road, and getting a second pair of eyes on the project can bring a fresh new perspective and help resolve tricky bugs quicker. It's important to realize that especially on a professional development team, it's better to bring someone else in to help fix something than to waste hours of time by looking for the answer yourself. Two heads are often better than one, and the last thing you want to do is waste time on a silly bug. So there you go. Those are some common ways of debugging your code. Whenever you have a tricky bug that's messing things up, you can try print statements, you can try error handling, commenting things out, look into your debugging tools, run some tests, or ask other developers for help.
So there were a few things in this video, and one of them was error handling. So the use of try and catch, it's very good for handle errors, but it's relatively advanced, and so we will skip it in this introductory course because this course was from beginners to intermediates. But if you're interested, we can do a new course from low intermediate to upper intermediate, and so we can explain the use of try and catch in the details in another course. For the purposes of this course, I would suggest to focus on print statements, print as much as you can, because also you have an idea of what's happening in your code, and then slowly commenting pieces of code out. Then please use Google, because it's a huge important resource of solutions. So there are a lot of people that probably already encountered the same error that you have right now. And so if you just Google the error, you'll probably find a solution to your bug, or people that suggest stuff. And then if you can't figure out, instead of staying 3 weeks on the same error, it's good practice to ask for help in your lab or to someone that knows how to code. But asking for help is the last stage after print statements, commenting pieces of code out, and try to Google your error. So let's now see some easy and typical errors that you will probably face while coding. So the first one regards data type. There are several data types, and sometimes you might get errors that say that something is not compatible with a specific data type, and so you need another data type in order to apply a specific function. For example, here, error using max invalid data type. First argument must be numeric or logical. So what does it mean? It means that, for example, if we want to calculate some mathematical operations in a vector of strings, so a vector composed by words, we might receive an error like this. So for example, if we want to calculate the max value of a vector that contains only like words like a chair, desk, armchair, lamp, you cannot really calculate a mean, a numeric mean of these unless you calculate the number of single letters, but that's another story. And so we might receive an error like this one. So you can't use string, for example, and you need a numerical logic value here. So the data types, just to remind you, are integers. They're like numbers like 2, 3, 45, so without the decimal parts. And then we have floats. They're numbers with decimal parts. A float is also, for example, 3 comma. That's also a float. So it's not just below 0, just to make it clear. I meant like below 1. Then we have double, that is the default numeric data type. And then we have strings. We also have other data types, but let's focus on these ones that are the most common. Oh, also, it is possible to convert data types. So if you need like a float for something, and there is an error that says, and you have integers, you can convert integers into float. So check the documentation to learn more about it. But just know that it's a possible thing to do. So what are other frequent errors that we can encounter? So we have unrecognized function or variable. And this error is basically only caused by misspelling, mistake, or you forgot to define a variable or a function. So for example, you're using the variable a, but you never set a equals to something. Then another common indexing error occurs when you attempt to use an index that is larger than the number of elements in the array. So for example, you want to access the 6th element of an array, but actually the array is composed by only 5 elements. And so that's not possible. And then we have the same thing, but with a matrix. So to fix it, you should just check the size of the matrix. Then we have the expression to the left of the equal sign is not a valid target for an assignment. What does it mean? This error message arises because the misuse of the equal and the double equal operators. So the equal sign here does an assignment. So it says, for example, A equals 2. But the double equal does a logical test for equality. So it's checking, for example, if it's like here equal to, it assigns the variable. But if I say like A equals 2, equal 2, it means that I'm asking if this statement is true. And so the results here will be true. But we did that, so you already know this stuff. But sometimes it can just like slip your mind, and you might use this equal instead of the double equal or vice versa. Then we have subscript indices must either be real positive integers or logicals. It's kind of weird, this error, because you really should know what it means. Otherwise, it really feels cryptic. But this error happens when you name a variable with the name of a function. So do not ever, ever, ever name a variable with an existing function name. For example, mean. If you want to calculate the mean or something and you want to store it, then do not use mean like equal something that is going to mess things up. Use, for example, average or like a my mean or something like that. But do not use the name of function. Same thing for sum or max, mean, all this type of stuff. And then the last one, it's not enough input arguments. That's also a very typical error. So a function that, for example, takes more arguments than you provided. So for instance, you want to plot a correlation between two vectors, but you provide only one of them. And then you'll get an error that says not enough input arguments. Now we can try out our debugging skills, and we can try to fix some errors. So please open the file errors, and yeah, let's see what we can do. By the way, so today we finished the debugging part, and then next time is the very last class, and we'll have the project wrap up, and then we'll introduce the functions. Also, at the end, you have the references for this class. Okay, so where were we? Here. Oh, please open the errors file. So this is basically the file. We can try to do a few togethers, and then you can keep going on your own. Let's print one by one. Here we just notice that I use average. Oh, sorry, you can't see the actual. Notice that I used average here and not mean. Otherwise, I would have ended up having even another error. So, okay, here just stores the vector. Now let's try to calculate the mean of the average vector. Unrecognized function of variable mean, which was one of the typical errors. So what happened here? Oh, it's just a misspelling error, which it can happen very, very often. So we just write the right spelling, and then we can calculate the mean. Then what do we have here? Display every value of this array. Okay. Oh, we have to display it like one by one. I see. And so here's a for loop. What happened here? Oh yeah, we missed actually half of the for loop. So for vector equal 1 to the length of vector, display vector. Let's see if now it works. Yes, it does display every single one. Then we have run the section and fix the error. And then we have to display the fifth. I mean, we have to access the fifth element of the vector. Oh, now we got this error that is also pretty common. So what do we do here? We only have 4 elements, so we gotta access the fourth one. If we want to access the fifth element, then we have to add one. Here is 12. Magic, it's actually a function that produces a matrix. For example, in this case, it's like 4 by 4. Then if you use like magic 3, it's gonna be like 3 by 3 of all random numbers. For example, if I say number magic 7, it's gonna be this. If I say magic 2, it's gonna be this. So let's see this magic 4m. Notice that the highest number is 16, which is 4 times 4. If I use, by the way, magic 8, then the maximum number is going to be 64 because it's like 8 times 8. Here's 64. So that's a cool thing. So where were we? M equal magic 4. By the way, it was already stored. And then we want to display, I mean, not display, we want to access 18. But we have a problem because it's a 4 times 4, and so we have only 16 elements. So here again, same as the previous exercise, is going to be M16, and it's going to be 1. Yeah, it's this one. And now for these other ones that are more complicated, I'm gonna leave them to you. And so you can have fun to try debugging them. So also, if you have any question about the projects, please send me an email and we can discuss about them. Otherwise, just see you next week. Bye.